So, greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Del Barzi. As always, if you like what you see and hear, leave us a comment, subscribe, let us know what you think. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey, from students to retirees and anywhere in between. Today, I'm very, very pleased to welcome Kristi Van Winkle. Kristi is a registered nurse with experience caring for both pediatric and adult populations. A few years ago, she switched gears and started a freelance health writing business. In July of this year, she became a legal nurse consultant and added legal nurse writing to her title. When she is not writing or building her business, she spends her days caring for her home, homeschooling her daughter, and volunteering at her church. Welcome, 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 Kristi.
Hi.
I appreciate you doing this. This talking to nurses is the best part of my day very often, so thank you. First of all, why are you a nurse?
I became a nurse because I knew I wanted to help people and as many people as I could.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, it was a toss-up between if I was gonna teach voice and be a voice teacher or be a nurse. And my dad pointed out that, well, you don't really need a degree to teach voice necessarily, but you do if you want to be a nurse. And so I decided to go ahead and do that. And then it didn't help that the college I was presently going to did not have a nursing program, and my then fiance was at a college that did have a nursing program. So I decided to switch over and do nursing so I could be there with him as well. So it was a combination of things.
This itself is a directive right there. I mean, what are you gonna do? So anyway, you always had this inclination toward helping and caring. Nursing fits that whole mold. But when you got into nursing, um, did it fit what you thought?
Um, yes. I mean, as a nurse, you are helping people in their worst circumstances. Especially when working as a pediatric nurse, I saw parents in
Yeah.
so many stages of just raw grief and raw emotion that you don't get anywhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
so yes, it's very much a like one of the best places I think to help people and to make that impact.
Yeah. Yeah. Any challenges for you?
Challenges, yes. Um, I have a, a speech impediment. I I have a stutter and a block,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, they get more pronounced when I'm stressed and when I'm tired, which happens a lot when you're a nurse. So, though those were always kind of a challenge to overcome those
Mhm.
particular things. But I always found that the other nurses around me were, for the most part, they understood and they would step in and help if they realized,
Yeah.
okay, just needs like a little push to say, okay,
Yeah.
Um, so the other thing is just that I am an introvert. And so the going to work every night and meeting new people every night and having to act like I'm not an
Yes.
introvert was
Yes.
very difficult and draining for me.
Yes.
I would go home and just have nothing left to give because I had given it all that night. So those were the biggest challenges for me. I mean, they're all personal, but those were the biggest ones right there.
That's what it is. Most of them are. And it's funny that you said, because you know what? I, I continue to be actually surprised at how many nurses tell me that they're introverts. It almost seems like it's a requirement.
Well, maybe it's not. I don't know.
I don't know. Almost seems like and our job, our profession requires you to be outside of yourself, you know. But yeah, so maybe it's just how it teaches us to grow.
That could very well be.
So you've worked with pediatrics and adults.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, what draws you the most?
Um, I loved the pediatric intensive care unit. Absolutely loved it. It was the very first place I started out as a nurse. So brand new green nurse, tossed in there. I learned a lot, and
Mhm.
I absolutely loved it. And like, to me, when somebody asks, "What's your favorite part?" it's pediatrics, and
Mhm.
I would do that my whole life if I could. But on the other hand, I didn't have my daughter when I was working as a
Mhm.
pediatric nurse, and I don't know how that would affect going back to pediatric nursing. Like,
Mhm.
because it's so much harder to compartmentalize. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but like, when I think of my favorite parts of nursing, it's definitely kids. I enjoy, um from a medical point, they're so resilient and they
Yeah.
can overcome things that adults can't overcome, and the attitudes. And I enjoy, um teaching parents. And when I was pretty new, I had the opportunity to teach a lot of parents and to encourage a lot of parents from personal experiences of, that I had had myself. A lot of our kids would come back from surgery and they would have huge, huge scars all along their chest and
Mm.
everything. And a lot of times they were so the parents were so obsessed with the scars and how awful it was going to look when it was done, and that was not at all a priority, but to them it was.
Yeah.
And I had heart surgery when I was 6 months old, and my mom talked all the time about how the nurses were always there for her and how she wouldn't have made it without the nurses and all that kind of thing. And that may be another reason why I kind of
Yeah.
went in in that way, was just my mom was so appreciative of that. And I remember this one particular time, I there was a mom, very, very sick little, I think it was about 3 months old, and she had a thoracotomy, and it looked awful, horrible, staples all along her side. And mom was just overcome with, the staples look
Mhm.
awful, the site looks awful, it's so terrible. And she was concerned about what that was going to look like and how that
Yeah.
was going to impact her life when she grew
Yeah.
up. And at that point, we were more concerned that this child might not live than the scar. But I was able to take mom into the bathroom and show her a little bit of my scar and show her she
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like, move on. And that, I mean, she slept that night, and hadn't slept, and like,
Who knows
had
when?
little things like that
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
loved being able to do.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I get that. And sometimes, you pick the battle that you can fight. It intellectually, I think should probably knows that this is not the most important thing, but this is the battle she can fight right now.
Right. It is overwhelming. for
Yeah.
them. And they
Yeah.
need to know, okay, this is going to be okay. And now I
Yeah.
can focus on something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that so many times, just those types of educational things just helped tremendously to just take that load off of this
Yeah.
already overwhelmed parent.
Yeah. 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 I get that. I get that. What would you like to see change in nursing?
Probably the same thing all nurses would love to see changed. Safety. Safety is when you go to work and you're concerned that if something goes wrong, you're not going to have any backup. Um, I would go to work, not so much in my PICU job, but later on in my floor job, I would go to work and like literally be praying that my license would still be good by the end of my shift because
Yeah.
we were so understaffed and admin just kind of, well, do what you got to do. Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never felt safe in that job. Like I never felt like I had the backup that I needed if something were to go down. Um, it depended
Yeah.
on, and in some way I think it's always this way. It depends on the crew that you're working with, and you walk in and you know, okay, it's going to be a good night, just
Yeah. Yeah.
based upon who's there. But
Yeah.
and that's that way all the time. But on the other hand, it's just, thinking, oh, I don't know, you never know what you're walking into.
Yeah, that's true. You never know what you're walking into, and that is the truth, whether you have um adequate staffing or you don't. But at the same time, when very often we do stuff that because, well, this is who we are. You walk into to work and you have a heavier patient load that you really should have, but you're going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in the back of your mind, you know that those who make decisions are counting on the fact that you're going to do it anyway.
Right.
And somewhere, and this is why I guess you don't feel safe because your own safety is clearly not considered in this whole equation.
Right. And sometimes it gets discouraging because it's
Yeah.
like you want to prepare to give the best amount of care
Yeah.
that you can. And that person over in the corner who isn't critical isn't going to get that much attention because I have three other patients that need me now. And
Yeah.
I always felt like I was picking and choosing who gets my attention. And I didn't like that. I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to give everybody the attention that they
Yeah.
deserved.
Yeah. 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 And I'm glad you bring that because people, when you complain about that, people talk about things like acuity levels. Um, and I have said before, and people have looked at me as though I'm crazy, that when you talk to me about acuity level, I think you don't really know what acuity levels are. Because just because somebody is not physically in distress, just because somebody has not fallen, does not mean that they don't need close attention. Does not mean because they're not complaining, does not mean that they don't need me now.
Right.
So your assessment skills and my assessment skills are totally different. And you're looking at tasks and I'm looking at people.
Right. And how many times do things change throughout the
Yeah,
night? Like,
yeah.
I've had a patients who are like, fine at the beginning of shift, and then an hour later, there's a call overhead, and it's a code, and it's that patient, and what in
It's
the world was
exactly.
that?
Yeah.
And yeah, staffing on acuity is not always the best option.
No, but that's the word they throw out.
uh,
So you're a writer.
yes, ma'am.
And yeah, and everyone now, I hear it very frequently that, technology and artificial intelligence and stuff like that is going to impact greatly how we write, what we write, even in healthcare. How do you see it in fact affecting what we put out there?
Um, I think for a while it's going to be a struggle and an issue. But I think eventually people are going to realize that AI doesn't have the nuances, or it doesn't perceive the nuances that we as nurse writers do. It hasn't cared for these people. It knows
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It knows what the internet knows. it doesn't have the experience that we have. And I think eventually things are going to come back around, and people aren't going to be as interested in the AI. I do think that doing like an editing thing might not be a bad gig, let the AI arrive and I'll change it. That might not be that might be kind of like where it's headed, but I don't know how long that will last either before people say, hey, let's go back and let the actual experts write this.
Let the humans do it. Yes, the humans do it. Spitting out the facts is not the same as interpreting the facts.
Right. And from what I have seen in AI, because I've experimented a little bit with it. I've never written anything with it per se, but I've experimented with it, and there's no empathy there. There's no. It's just it's just
exactly
spitting out facts, which anybody can do.
What advice would you give to someone now who wants to be a nurse? Because we've gone through quite a bit in the last few years. We've gone through the pandemic. We've gone through let us say since the early to mid 2010s. Electronic medical records have exploded. The pandemic is here. We're talking about nursing shortages and burnout and people leaving and people pivoting and all of that. And I wonder what it would be like if I was starting that profession now. What would someone tell me?
Honestly, sometimes I just want to say, no, run, don't do it. But on the other hand, with so many nurses leaving, we need good nurses going back to it. We really do. I don't have that option because of some issues that I have, but we do need good nurses. But I would say, as far as advice goes, make sure you do know like what you're getting into. It's a lot of hard work, and you have to understand the legalities of what you're getting yourself into, and how difficult it really is. Make sure that you pick and choose where you're going, and as much as you can during an interview, you are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Yeah.
Well, I went to a nursing school a while ago. And like you said, I don't know how different it is now, but I do know even back before COVID, I graduated from a nursing school in 2004. And I remember coming out and just being like, whoa, I don't know anything. Why did they give me this degree? And it was it's a foundation, but yeah, it really doesn't, it's so specialized that you have to pretty much relearn it all again for that specialty. And so that might be another thing I would tell new nurse, don't come out thinking that you know everything, because those of us who have been doing this for years and years don't know anything.
Don't know. Indeed. So what would you say, since we're talking about what we were telling you, nurses, lastly but not leastly, we've been talking about, overwhelm and burnout and giving advice and stuff like that. And recognizing that our education does not encourage us to take care of ourselves. What does self-care mean to you?
Personally, it's making sure that I have enough left over to give my husband and my daughter what they deserve and what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Like I already said before, sometimes I would come home after work and I was just I was done. You know, my 3-year-old would come up and say, "Mom, I skinned my knee, and there's the
Yeah.
band-aid. Take care of it." I try not to, but you reach that point where you're just like, oh, I take care of people all night, and then I have to come home and take care of more people. And
Yeah.
so it was a matter of making sure I took the time off that I needed to, and I got the rest that I needed to, which is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that that when I was resting, I was doing things that had nothing to do with my job.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I don't read nursing journals very often at all, unless it's because I'm writing something about something, because it turns into work, and I
Yeah,
need
I gotcha.
my downtime to be relaxing, and there has to be a very distinct um, line drawn between work and
Yeah.
my time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's my self-care right there, is just making
Yeah.
sure no, I'm not diagnosing your rash. I'm off duty.
Yep, yep, yep. That's not working, not right now. With a different hat on.
I'm now a mom. Go away.
Yeah, totally different hat. Kristi, thank you so, so very, very much for this conversation. It's been a
Well, thank
pleasure.
you.
It really has.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
enjoyed it too.
My pleasure.